Welcome back to Hobby Jogging Elite, talking about the Adios Pro 3 today. Another shoe review, and I really enjoyed my time in this shoe, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's get into some of the details about my experience with the Adidas Adios Pro 3. Alright, as always during this shoe review, we're going to split it up into a couple different sections. We'll talk about some of the stats, the figures, the numbers, general overview. Then we'll get into some of my likes, some of my dislikes, and a general conclusion whether you should buy it or not. So feel free to skip around as you want. But in regards to the Adios Pro 3, in my men's size 9.5, this shoe comes in at 7.8 ounces, or 221 grams. So not the lightest of light shoes. It's certainly not lighter than the Vaporfly Next Percent from Nike. It's kind of in that Alphafly weight range, to be honest, and it doesn't look quite as bulky, I don't think, as the Alphafly. It looks a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more minimal, yet the weight is right there, and I think some of that comes from that midsole foam. And by the way, I forgot to say so, but this shoe has a 39.5 millimeter heel to a 33 millimeter drop in the forefoot. So just skirting the line of that legal limit in the heel stack height for a very odd and not often seen 6.5 millimeter drop. So this is Light Strike Pro all throughout. Not quite as soft as something like Zoom X feels in the Alphafly. I wouldn't even say it's as soft as Power Run PB over with Saucony shoes. This is a uniquely, I wouldn't quite say it's firm, but it's much more compact, a little bit more dense than some of these other foams we've seen in other brands' super shoes, but I really like it, and I think it suits a lot of different runners. So moving from the midsole to the outsole, we have the tried and true Adidas Continental rubber pair up here. And it sort of has limited coverage throughout the bottom of the shoe. You see there's two primary strips here in the heel, and then a nice slab up at the top and at the toe, but there's definitely some exposed Light Strike Pro, which has not been a problem for me throughout my first few runs that have amounted to right at 50 miles for the shoe. And yeah, I think it works really well. The upper, like I said, is extremely minimal. It's sort of only what you need and nothing that you don't. And that might not work for some people. It still seems to have a decent amount of structure to it given the branding overlays and some other added structure here around the lace eyelets and throughout the heel. There's not really a counter there. It's like the most minimal structure you could expect, and there's some padding here in the heel as well. So everything at a bare minimum of what you need in a race upper to kind of keep you locked in, give that sort of race day fit is there, but there is nothing more. So don't expect too many bells and whistles when it comes to this upper. I've heard some people have had some problems with heel slippage, but I have not at all, and I seem to always be on the unlucky end of the spectrum when it comes to experiencing issues with shoes, but I've not experienced issues with this at all. No rubbing, no blisters, no hot spots. It has been one of the most comfortable super shoes I have worn, no matter if it is a 15-mile long run or a really fast 5K run. It's comfortable. So with the general overview out of the way, let's talk about some of my likes. This is my first time using an Adidas super shoe, and I've heard amazing things about Light Strike Pro. My first time using it here, outside of using it in the Boston 10, which shouldn't really even count as an example of using Light Strike Pro in my opinion, but that is sort of tangential to this. The midsole is absolutely amazing. If you're somebody who hasn't been a fan of the sort of trend with super shoes where these midsole foams feel almost like marshmallows underfoot, this is going to be a solution to that for you. Again, I wouldn't call it firm, but it's firmer than that sort of max cushion soft feel that you might expect out of, say, a New Balance fuel cell foam, or again, maybe not the Zoom X and the Vaporfly, but probably so, in the Alpha Fly, definitely in that back block. And yeah, I think this midsole foam is absolutely amazing. It's one that, even though it's not quite as soft as other brands' midsole foams, performs well at a wide range of paces. So I did a couple long runs in this, and one namely was a 15-mile long run where I did 3 by 3 miles at marathon pace. And then in between each of those 3-mile sections, I did 1 mile at a pretty easy pace. So the marathon pace sections were about 6:40 a mile, and the easy ones were anywhere from 8:15 to 8:45. And while it felt amazing cruising at those marathon miles, it was extremely easy to just lock into a pace and sort of let your mind wander and let your legs just do all of the work. This worked really well in that case and works really well with my stride, and I'm sure with other people's stride as well. It felt just as good on those easy pace miles. I felt like I was supported underfoot. It wasn't forcing me to work any way that I didn't feel was natural. It just felt like an extension of what I was already doing, and I absolutely loved running in it. Another thing I like a lot is the outsole. Again, I talked about the Continental grip, Continental tires. This is a shoe that you're going to be able to turn corners really quickly in with confidence. You're going to be able to run out in the wet with confidence. You're not going to slip around at all. It doesn't matter that there aren't any noticeable grooves in this. This is a similar sort of outsole makeup to if you've run in like the Atreyu Artist before, where it's just like a 1 or 2 millimeter slap of rubber, and that's just kind of it besides the exposed midsole. It works. I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's something to this just like flat matte rubber addition that some shoes are starting to do on their outsoles, but the grip is absolutely amazing in this shoe, and I had absolutely zero problems with it. And my final like is the midsole geometry here. You can probably tell when I hold it flat like this that it seems to sort of dip pretty substantially here towards the end. When you first start running in this, especially I would say if you're a mid-foot to forefoot striker, you feel that sort of propulsiveness. And it doesn't feel like it's forcing you to do anything in an uncomfortable way. It feels very, very natural. And I know that sort of extremely deep cut at the toe section of the midsole might turn some people off, but I think it works really well in this shoe. Again, whether you're going easy pace or really fast. I've done, again, marathon pace long runs in this, and I just completed my first 5K race ever where I averaged about 5:58 a mile throughout the 5K, and this shoe performed super well there. It's not the most lightweight of shoes. Again, it's just shy of 8 ounces in my men's size 9.5, but it did not feel heavy on foot at all. It kept me rolling through those very quick paces during that race, and I think it performed admirably. Now, for my dislikes, I feel like with the minimal upper, I don't get the absolute best lockdown in this shoe. Adidas's sizing is always kind of different than other brands seem to be. I've always kind of tried to find a sweet spot between 9.5 and 10 for Adidas sizing, because Adidas is traditionally like a pretty narrow-footed shoe, and they always run a little bit long. But I got a 9.5 here, and I definitely have more room in the toe box than I do in other shoes that are 9.5. So I don't know if Adidas is just like fluctuating their average size from shoe to shoe. I don't know how it works, but I wouldn't say the fit is absolutely perfect in this. This might be a shoe that you want to try on in a store before you buy it, just to be sure that you're getting that perfect sizing. I am a 9.5. It fits well enough. I'm just not used to having as much room in the toe box, which isn't an issue for me. I like having more room. It just is a different experience than I've had before. The other thing I don't love is what's going on in the heel. While it works fine, it definitely feels like it's going to blister at some point. These are kind of cushiony, but they're really not at all. They're just kind of there. There's not a ton of actual support there. And I don't really know what is going on with here. Is this supposed to be a substitution for a pull tab? I've seen some people run with it tucked in there to prevent blisters. I see some people running it with it up like that. I see some people running with it out. It just feels like a useless piece of fabric that sort of confuses me. And if it's supposed to be a pull tab, I don't really think you need it regardless. And finally, I don't love the laces here. If you're gonna have an extremely minimal tongue on a shoe, I think you need to have not thicker laces, but ones that cover more surface area, because I'm sure if you've ever tied a running shoe too tight on a shoe that has a very thin tongue, you felt that lace bite on the top of your foot. And it is one of the worst feelings you can have. If you go on a long run or any run, regardless of how long it is, and you come back and you untie your shoe and you realize it was tied too tight and you get that lace bite pain at the top of your foot, it sucks. And this shoe feels like it is just asking for that to happen. I think with a thinner tongue like this, you can still add a very minimal padding towards the top of the tongue to sort of counteract that. Or you can have laces that maybe are a little bit more stretchy. They don't need to be super stretchy, especially in a race shoe, but have a little bit more give or a little bit more forgiving to the top of your foot. But these are thin, a little bit stiff, and feel just overall kind of low quality. I know these are all minor issues. Again, I really like this shoe, so I was kind of nitpicking for issues to pick out, but they seemed like they could be genuine concerns for some people, albeit I have not experienced any issues with this shoe. So, in conclusion, the Adidas Adios Pro 3. Put about 50 miles into this racer, and it feels like it has not degraded whatsoever. It pretty much looks the same as it did out of the box. Certainly feels even better than it did out of the box, as I think Light Strike Pro is one of those foams that doesn't necessarily need a ton of breaking in, but certainly helps once you put some force into it, put some miles into it. And I think you, as time goes on, get more out of the shoe than you did right out of the box. I'm loving this. It is certainly a contender for the Nike super shoes that I use. I would definitely consider this in a marathon just as much as I would consider using a Vaporfly or an Alphafly. Ran a 5K in it, absolutely loved it. I think this would be a great 10K shoe and a great half marathon shoe, and will certainly be in consideration for my April half marathon coming up in just over 4 months. Have you run in any of the Adios Pro shoes, the 1, the 2, or the 3? Or the Takumi Sen series? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the Adidas super shoes compared to others. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace.